Got an unpolitically correct opinion you want to share? We've got some hot takes from people answering those questions in celebration of our 200th Speak Up episode, and we think you'll enjoy the answers. Plus, we've got an update on how Fairfax citizens are holding their local government accountable for designating Easter Sunday as Transgender Day of Visibility. Welcome to Speak Up Virginia, equipping you to speak up on the life, family, and freedom issues that matter most to you. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candy Cushman, with our president, Victoria Cobb. Well, welcome, everyone. Glad to have you with us for Speak Up Virginia. You know, some of our more astute observers might have noticed the number 200. That is right. We have just hit our 200th episode of Speak Up Virginia, so we're going to do a little celebration of that today. But, you know, Victoria, this does bring back some memories. We have come a long way. You know, for starters, we did begin in a literal closet. I don't know, what is that closet, like 2 feet across or something? We have now officially come out of the closet.
I'm proud of us. We are not in a closet anymore. But to be fair to our, so our audience understands, our office has a lot of high ceilings. And so it's really hard to get good sound. And that was where we could at least provide decent sound. Yeah. Although we've improved the mics now too, so the sound should be pretty. Yeah,
we were actually sharing a mic, and no, they didn't stuff us in the closet because they're embarrassed of us. It's because we were trying to get good sound. Well, I am going to put you on the spot a little bit, just in honor of this. What's your worst and best moments with the podcast?
Worst moments. Well, I mean, thankfully they don't see the worst moments, right? Like our audience, if they're really bad, we actually do cut them and try again because you don't want to see some of the bloopers. But
Jesse makes us look really good.
Yes, exactly. It's just that you sometimes trip over your words and you don't realize, but you're trying to say a word and it's just not coming out right. And sometimes you repeat it a bit.
Yeah. I was about to say literally again. I was thinking the other day, sometimes we'll just have like a word of the day that we just unconsciously repeat over and over. And I don't want to tip off our listeners to play Speak Up Bingo or something, but one of the words was literally.
Yeah,
we said that.
It can be a filler word. You can sometimes you don't intend to, but when you're thinking, you insert a word and you say it over and over again. But I'm laughing because if you've seen this it's all over on social media right now, where Kamala Harris, our vice president and candidate, did this interview and she kept repeating the word holistically, and she did it like 3 or 4 times in a sentence, and literally the all over on the memes, it's all going, oh, she learned a new word today. And I hope our audience doesn't ever feel that way when we're
inviting this now.
Yeah, we kind of are. So don't pay attention.
It happens to the best of us. But yeah, the best times for me have been some of the incredible speakers that we've had on, like Attorney General Jason Miyares, who talked about just how he values religious freedom with his family coming from Cuba, and Chloe Cole being so vulnerable to come and share her testimony of walking out of transgenderism. So we've had some incredible moments, and I hope we have a lot more.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and keeping at it because it's I think it's a great opportunity to get to share what's going on, and we love getting people's feedback. Definitely, we invite your feedback at any time. We'd love to hear what people are thinking about.
And I will mention that we've had some great feedback lately, and I think we're going to try to share that on the next episode as possible. I want to share some of the feedback. Some of you have been emailing us. We get those, and I want to thank you for that. But just in celebration of the milestone that we have reached here, we put together some fun kind of man on the street interviews, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But first, Victoria, I did want to get your hot take on the polls that we've been seeing. Now, I will give a quick disclaimer that, these are the polls when we tape this, and, they change from day to day. But at the time that we tape this, it was showing that Virginia really is in play. We are in a dead heat when it comes to these key races, including the presidential race and our governor one coming up. And I'm just going to put this headline up on the screen for a moment from the Virginia Mercury. And it is showing, you can see it's talking about Spanberger and Winsome Earle-Sears currently in a tie for the race for governor. And of course, we still got a ways before that election. But what do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll start with obviously the presidential, because that's the one we're in right now. And most of the polls, nearly all of the polls, have had it very, very close in Virginia. And honestly, I am pleased to see that, because as we know, in some past elections, Virginia has gone heavily liberal in some of its voting. And so I think that's great news. Again, you're still about 40 days, a little shy of 40 days. By the time folks hear it, it'll be more like, I don't know, drop 7 off of that, whatever it is. But, the bottom line is that's still a world away in the reality of politics. A lot can happen in the last 30 days, but early voting has started to come in. So we have to realize that now we have both polls and early voting totals. And so what's interesting is just that we're seeing that truly in the early vote, traditionally, so folks understand the scenario, traditionally Democrats like to vote early and do that in much larger numbers than Republicans. And so what's interesting is we're seeing a bit of a surge from Republicans in Virginia, that there is more early voting from Republicans than in the past. And what you really look for is, are the people who are voting early, are they people who are going to vote anyway, whether they do it early or they do it on election day? Or are you actually driving out voters that seldom vote, that don't come out in every election? And so actually what's interesting, more interesting than tied up polls, I think, is just that we are seeing that more people who are either first-time voters or I only come out once every, Virginia has election every year. So there's what they call 4 for 4, people that do it every year. And then there are people who just, if it's the presidential, they'll pop out. But we are seeing that the conservatives seem to be pulling out more people. Now, it's early. Don't take too much of this. We need to motivate our voters, but it does seem like maybe that is happening. So that's sort of the national scenario.
I think that is really fascinating, considering the deluge of Harris ads. I mean, every time I'm on the computer, literally, I get a Kamala Harris. I said literally, but I get a Kamala Harris ad. I mean, they have really opened the floodgates, and so
that may actually be what's motivating people who have values, and we hope it is.
Because, it's interesting.
Sometimes the things that they use to motivate their own people, and same thing with either party. Sometimes what Republicans use to motivate their own base to come out and vote can also drive up those that absolutely oppose that. So that's kind of how politics works. So I wouldn't be surprised if the commercials we're seeing are actually upsetting conservatives, and that may be, but again, people need to continue to be paying attention to this race, be focused on, have I voted? Have I invited my 10 friends to vote? This is kind of the season that we're in. So now you also asked about a race that is a year away.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to me that we even have polls out, that they're even talking to people about this, because people are much more focused on what's happening in a month than they are in a year. But it is interesting. So right now, Abigail Spanberger is the lead candidate for the Democrats, likely to be the only one, is really what we're hearing, that they've sort of kind of worked it all out on their side, and there probably won't be a whole nomination contest over there. And then we have our Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earle-Sears on the Republican side. We don't know what will develop on the Republican side, whether there will be a nomination contest, but this is sort of how it looks at the moment. And I think it's great that it's tied. I think that's typical of Virginia. We are a very narrowly divided state. Both have high name ID, so that's not always the case. I mean, when Governor Youngkin ran at the beginning, people were completely unaware of who he was, because he was only known in the business sector. So in this case, we have 2 people who have been in high offices. So Spanberger has been a congresswoman, so people know her from that. And the Democrats truly seem to love her. So, I think it's actually great to see that Winsome and her are tied, that Winsome is really attracting. I mean, she's got a great story. I mean, people, when you learn about Winsome, it's hard to not be intrigued by her and really kind of think, wow, like there's some real leadership there. That
she's got real charisma.
Yeah.
You can't help but like her. But,
yes.
I also saw when they put in Jason Miera's name, he's tied too.
Yeah, so it's just a question of, question of what ends up developing. That's why it's weird that they're taking a poll before we even halfway know what the nomination could look like.
Well, I was going to ask you about, because they had some other interesting numbers on here, and some of this is polling data coming out of University of Mary Washington, and that one, I thought it was interesting, and I was wondering if it played into this whole picture. It showed that there were many more Virginians, over half, that feel negatively about the direction of the overall nation, but less of them feel, negatively about the direction of Virginia. So I thought, is this playing into how maybe our candidates so far are doing?
Well, it is really important. Governor Youngkin has very strong favorables, compared to other elected officials, and has better favorables than President Biden does. So when you sort of look at them sort of side by side, how is it at the national level, how's it at the state level, it's not surprising that
it's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, it's a pretty big difference. And that is going to ultimately, that kind of a feeling can help both the people who, if you're unhappy with the direction of the country, you're going to pick change. The change candidate is obviously not the current vice president, right? So that's probably fueling some of the very closeness of the national race. But then also, if you have a governor that people generally like, they're more open to having someone from the same party the next year. If his favorability is very low, that can affect that party then moving forward with whoever their nominee is next year. And so that's kind of so in this moment, Lieutenant Governor Winsome being the current candidate for governor with the Republicans, that's actually part of helping her numbers.
All right. Well, like Victoria said, conservatives should not get overconfident.
No, in Virginia, there's never a moment that a conservative should not be working to do everything they can to help their principles actually
life and parental rights.
Yes, all the time, because we are, as I said, an election every year and issues constantly.
Well, hopefully we didn't just nerd out too much for all of y'all on the election details, but I couldn't resist picking Victoria's brain on that. So getting back to our special celebration for our 200th episode, this is going to be fun because what we did was, and actually I'm going to pause for a minute. I want to thank our listeners for helping us reach this point. We would not be here without all of you listening to us every week and sharing the information with friends. So thank you so much for hanging in there with us from the beginning. And it's going to be exciting to see where we go from here. So, but having said that, what we did to celebrate was we sent out our brand new digital marketing manager, Nathan, at our gala that we had last week, and he did kind of man on the street interviews, and he asked some interesting questions. Among them were, give us your hot take on your unpolitically correct opinion right now, and also some serious feedback on why people feel like we have got to speak the truth into our culture right now.
In celebration of our 200th episode, we're featuring our listeners who are speaking up on the issues facing our culture today. From our man on the street, Nathan Henderson, here's your political hot take.
Take is that I want to be hotter. I want to speak up against overly air-conditioned buildings when women are wearing short sleeves and have bare legs.
Right. We are speaking up on our politically incorrect hot take. So what is yours?
Tupac is still alive. He's hiding out in Canada.
I think Rob Lowe's hair is fake. I think he wears a wig.
Well, thank you. I also agree. Why should Christians speak up in our culture today?
Well, because we have the ability in America to speak our minds, and if we remove ourselves from the public square, then our views will not be heard. That was never the intent of the founders. And after all, D. James Kennedy, that wonderful pastor who is now in heaven, he said, should we just leave the laws to everyone else? No. So we must be heard as well.
Well, I think the fact is we're losing our culture, and I think this country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And the fact is that churches are closing, attendance in churches are down, and people are classifying themselves as basically atheist and no religion. And certainly we need to recapture that. The country was founded on that, and I think that encourages strong families, and we need to get it back.
God sets the bar of what is moral, what is just, what is truth. Christians come up under that, and we do the best that we can. Everything else follows. So if Christians put the bar down here and don't follow God, or don't show the world what to do and how to live, we will all be hedonistic societies that will collapse.
I think that if we don't stand up for something, then we'll fall for anything. That's an old adage. It's important that we stand up, because when we stand up, then we embolden and encourage other Christians who may be more fearful to stand up.
We are speaking up on our politically incorrect hot takes. What is yours?
Changing a child's gender is child abuse.
How crazy is it that boys are competing in girls' sports when girls are working their entire lives, getting up early in the morning, working out, doing everything they can to win the sport, and they're competing against boys, men, that there's no way they can beat that. And it's really wrong. It's ridiculous.
We are speaking up about our politically incorrect hot takes, so what is yours?
Probably that Kamala Harris is honestly, she's not a good woman. Like, she's a woman, but she's not, like, good enough to be even close to a president, a role model, or anything.
My mom herself is a teacher in public school, and she can't express her values really in her classroom. It's just not really allowed. And even if it's just something as little as a Bible verse on a little plaque that she could be allowed to hang up. And some children, that may be the only chance to have a meeting or interaction with faith or with God. You know, they may not get that at home or anywhere else. And if they go to school and their teacher might be religious, like, it shouldn't be as frowned upon as, say, our culture is just all about, oh, support every religion until it comes to Christianity. And that is a really big issue in our society today, which, in my opinion, I just think it reflects how true Christianity is. You know, in the Bible it says, you know, if the world hates you, it hated me first. And so I just think that we're a living proof of that.
All right. Well, before we head out today, I did want to give a quick good news update on something our Speak Up Fairfax team did recently. Will you bring us up to speed?
Yeah. So many of folks might recall that we had this situation, not only the Biden administration, but also the taxpayer-funded Fairfax County Board of Supervisors declared, if you remember this, they declared Transgender Day of Visibility on the holiest day of the year, the Christian holiday, which is Easter. And so our Speak Up Fairfax team didn't take too well to that, and they decided that this can't really go unanswered. They had to do something. And so they had to sort of make their voice known to their Board of Supervisors. So about 100 Speak Up members showed up, and these were parents and they were clergy, you know,
church
pastors
members
and members of churches, and they showed up at the Board of Supervisors meeting this past September, and they made a fantastic showing. They're all wearing these white shirts and holding up these awesome signs that say "Honor our faith community." And I think we're just going to put some pictures up so people can see this. I mean, really, quite a show.
You know, I just really love how they approached this, because it wasn't, you know, just this condemnation or rude or snarky. They approached it in a very winsome, redemptive way. You know, we need to restore some balance to this equation and just show some equal respect for the church community. They very humbly spoke the truth in love. And like I was saying, their whole point here was demonstrating respect for the entire community, not excluding a very large church population, especially when you're talking about an action on the part of taxpayer-funded government officials. So I should mention the reason they're just now speaking up on this, which was last week at the time we were taping this. It was at the September Board of Supervisors meeting. And it took them that long to get in front of the Board of Supervisors because it was actually quite complicated for them to figure out how they get a speaking slot to, you know, be able to share what their concerns are. And there was this crazy roll forward system where you could sign up 4 months previously, and then, you know, they would tell you you're speaking 4 months later.
I just hope people don't have an urgent problem in Fairfax that they need to put in front of there, because it sure doesn't seem to work that way.
Quite interesting. So with that said, let's just listen to one of our Speak Up leaders, Tom Ferguson, addressing the Board of Supervisors.
My name is Tom Ferguson. I'm a husband, a father, a longtime Fairfax County resident, and also one of nearly 40% of the Fairfax County residents who are Christian. As followers of Jesus Christ, you can imagine how disappointed we were when the Transgender Day of Visibility happened to fall this year on Easter Sunday, the most holy and significant day on the Christian calendar for over 2,000 years. We were equally disappointed that, knowing this, the board voted 9-0 to observe that day on Easter. But those events caused us to step back and ask ourselves how we might be able to better recognize the deep ties the church has to this community and the love shown by the church through its many acts of service and compassion. John Adams once famously said, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people and is wholly inadequate for the governance of any others." And so for these reasons, I am asking the board to help celebrate our county's rich Christian history by approving the following proclamation for Church Heritage Recognition Day. Now, I'm going to show you some mercy and not read all this to you, but we do have a few drafts. I'm going to leave for the Board of Supervisors drafts of this proclamation, but I'm going to give you a couple greatest hits. Is that fair? Okay. Whereas the Christian church tradition and the many churches of Fairfax County which partake in that tradition play a vital role in the shaping of the cultural, social, and moral landscape of the communities within Fairfax County, fostering the development of arts, education, and sciences. Whereas local churches have a rich and prominent history involving our founding fathers such as George Washington, George Mason, and other historical figures including Lord Thomas Fairfax. Whereas Calvary Road Baptist Church recently won a significant religious freedom victory benefiting the First Amendment freedoms of other places of worship in the community. Whereas the historical church tradition has had a strong role in the strengthening of the family unit as a foundational institution of society, advocating for healthy marriages and the importance of parenting. And then we have draft language, be it resolved that the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors does hereby recognize November 21st, 2024 as Fairfax County Church Heritage Recognition Day, acknowledging its profound impact on the welfare of families in Fairfax County.
Well, I love how he started out explaining to the Fairfax Board of Supervisors that he was a resident, a dad, and that this whole thing provided just an opportunity to remind the community of the value of the Christian community, like to remind people of what services, what value the churches bring to their whole community. And so basically, I think it's a great approach, and he's just trying to kind of let's balance things out between what you guys have done. He didn't say it, aggressively, but just with this idea of a Church Heritage Recognition Day.
Yeah. Asking them, will you put forward a proclamation recognizing Church Heritage Recognition Day on November 21st? They just threw a day out there. Not that it has to be that day, but it seemed like a good day in November because this board recognizes all kinds of random days throughout the year. So this seemed reasonable and logical that they could do. And I thought one thing about the proclamation that was important, you didn't get to hear the whole thing, but it highlighted the long-standing Christian conviction that every single human being is created in God's image. And so the church community has a compassionate care regard for their fellow man in the community around them, and they act out of that. So the proclamation highlighted all of this work that the churches there locally have done with hospitals and providing for the poor and needy in the community. I mean, there's just countless examples that we could give. So it was great to have an opportunity to recognize the history of that.
And I like the fact that Tom pointed out this other important point, which is that they designated Transgender Day on Easter Sunday, which, again, has been the holiest day of the Christian calendar for 2,000 years, right? And so at the time when this first came out and people were really upset about this, there was an attempt to basically respond by saying, well, the Transgender Day always falls on the same day, and it just happens this year that it is also Easter. And Tom did a good job acknowledging that, but still, it just seemed like, at least locally, with Virginia's rich and diverse Christian heritage and all the churches, that the county board could have been more sensitive to this and just bumped, again, a day is a day, right? Like, this is the point. We didn't care whether it's November, whatever. They didn't have to have it be Easter, and they could have been sensitive to that and be more respectful to the opposition. But instead, Fairfax, of course, took an unopposed vote. I think that's important, and they moved it forward.
Yeah, and let's just be honest. If this had been another religious community group's holy day, I'm just going to point out the obvious, like a Muslim day or something like that, I don't think this would be happening. So I do think it was worth holding them accountable for that. And as I pointed out in my statement, because I also submitted a video supporting what they were doing, and I pointed out that Fairfax County's own vision statement says, that they want to see, quote, connected communities where all individuals and families are supported and empowered to thrive. And I pointed out that Christians and churches are also included in that community that they want to empower and help thrive. And as Tom pointed out, that's at least 40% of the community.
Yeah. And also, as you know, Dr. Marty Baker, who is the senior pastor of Burke Community Church, he also spoke and did an outstanding job just representing the faith community. So let's also hear his remarks.
I am the senior pastor at Burke Community Church, and I've invited some of my 3,000 parishioners to join us today. My object is to talk about the importance of the local church to the county and to the community. And after being a senior pastor for 35 years, I could present a lot of points to you, but the salient points to me of why you would have a Church Recognition Day are related to the value of the church, such as churches provide love, care, and support for the needy, and that is inside and outside of the church. Churches provide an environment where people can learn how to live out the principles of Jesus Christ. His first sermon, the Sermon on the Mount, teaches great things. Like blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are those who are merciful, etc. So who would not want people to understand those core values to be a citizen of a city or a county? Churches provide moral stability and the adhering to belief in moral absolutes. George Washington, in his farewell address in September 19, 1796, said, "Of all of the dispositions and habits which led to political prosperity for our country," he says, "religion and morality are indispensable supports." I heartily agree.
Well, I mean, I wish we had time to listen to more of it because it really was good. But I mean, he's trying to make the point. He's talking about the intrinsic value of the faith community and that it comes out of Jesus teaching us to love our neighbor, and that is what they have done and done well in Fairfax.
Yeah, and for those of you that are familiar with the Fairfax area, you know that a lot of the whole religious freedom heritage, well, really the whole nation, came out of Fairfax, and that started a lot of times in the churches. And so we've got this incredible history of George Washington, George Mason, even who the city's named after, Lord Thomas Fairfax. You know, those historical figures, founding fathers, attended churches in Fairfax that are still there today. So I do think it is important for this to be an opportunity to recognize that history. And if you want to somehow support the efforts of Tom and Pastor Marty that you just heard speaking there are things you can do. I think we're going to try to get a banner up on the website. I think you probably could just look for the Honor Our Faith Community banner. And if you want to share that information with people you know in the Nova area, the more people I think that can be communicating with the Fairfax Board of Supervisors that they would like to see this Church Heritage Recognition Day proclamation move forward, I think that would be helpful if you just want to come along and support what they're doing. It's best probably if it's from the Nova Fairfax area, but you can share this with your friends that are there. And so again, that'll be an Honor Our Faith Community banner on the website.
Well, I'm just super proud of the impact that our Speak Up teams have had lately. They're just doing a fantastic job, and this is just yet another example of it.
Yes, I echo that. And if you want to be part of this, one thing you can do is help us get the word out about our Speak Up podcast. It's a great way to educate people about what's going on, help joining voices together. So make sure to share our Speak Up Virginia playlists. And remember, we are stronger when we speak together. We'll see you next time.